The lecture hall fell into absolute silence. Professor Lyradon stood frozen at her podium, her four eyes widening in perfect synchronization as she stared at the creature padding beside the human student. Her chitinous fingers trembled against the holographic display, causing the three-dimensional model of ancient Earth fauna to flicker and distort. "That," she whispered, her translator struggling to convey the shock in her native Zelthari clicks. "That cannot be what I think it is." Evan Cole smiled awkwardly, one hand resting on the massive gray wolf's head as Luna sat obediently at his side. The animal's amber eyes swept across the auditorium, observing the 200 alien students with calm intelligence. "Sorry I'm late, Professor," Evan said, making his way down the aisle. Luna's medical clearance took longer than expected. The Zelthari professor's breathing spiracles fluttered rapidly, a sign of extreme distress that Evan had learned to recognize during his semester at the Galactic Xenobiology Institute. Around them, students from a dozen different species leaned forward in their seats, some chittering nervously, others emitting concerned pheromone clouds that made the air thick with alien anxiety. "Medical clearance," Professor Don repeated slowly, as if testing whether the words made sense. "You brought a Canis lupus to my xenobiology class, a species that has been officially listed as extinct for 400 standard cycles." "Well," Evan scratched the back of his neck, "not exactly extinct. We have about 200,000 of them back on Earth. Luna here is from a conservation program in Yellowstone." A Vrelian student in the third row made a sound like escaping steam. 200,000? The galactic records show the species was eliminated during Earth's industrial expansion period. Human hunting and habitat destruction drove them to complete extinction by your year 2047. Evan winced. "Yeah, about that. The records are a bit outdated. We did almost lose them, but we brought them back. Reintroduction programs, protected territories, careful management. Humans are pretty good at fixing their mistakes when they put their minds to it. Sometimes." Professor Dawn descended from her podium slowly, her movements careful and measured. She had spent 30 years studying Earth's extinct megafauna, had written the definitive text on humanity's tragic ecological history. Every student in the Galactic Collective learned about Earth's lost wolves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked expansion. And now one sat in her classroom, tongue lolling, looking almost bored. "May I?" The professor's voice was barely audible. "May I approach?" "Sure," Evan nodded. "Luna's friendly. Well, to people she trusts. Just move slowly and let her sniff your hand first." The lecture hall watched in breathless silence as their professor, one of the collective's most respected xenobiologists, extended a trembling manipulator toward the wolf. Luna's nostrils flared, taking in the alien scent of ammonia-based biology and silicon-laced pheromones. Then, to everyone's shock, the wolf's tail wagged once, twice. Professor Don's hand made contact with Luna's fur, and the professor released a sound that the translator couldn't quite process. Something between a sob and a laugh. "She's real," Don whispered. "By the ancestral hive, she's actually real." A brave Corellian student raised a tentacle. "But Professor, how is this possible? We studied the extinction records extensively." The data was confirmed by 3 independent surveys. Evan shrugged. "The surveys happened during what we call the Dark Decades, when Earth was still pretty isolated from the collective. We were dealing with our own problems and weren't exactly advertising our conservation successes. By the time we joined the galactic community, everyone already assumed wolves were gone, and we didn't think to correct the record. Honestly, we didn't realize you guys cared so much." "Cared?" Professor Dawn looked up, her eyes glistening with moisture that Evan had learned meant deep emotion in her species. "Evan Cole, your wolves have been held up as the greatest tragedy of humanity's ascension. We teach entire courses on what your species lost. The wolf, the apex predator that evolved alongside your ancestors, that shaped your mythology, your culture, your very concept of loyalty and family. We believed you had destroyed that bond forever." She stood, addressing the entire auditorium. "Class, what you are witnessing today changes everything we thought we knew about humanity's relationship with their biosphere. The dominant narrative has been that humans are uniquely destructive, that they climb to the stars by crushing everything beneath them." She gestured to Luna, who had now sprawled on the floor, enjoying a belly rub from Evan. "But this creature's existence tells a different story. It speaks of redemption, of learning, of a species that could bring back what it had nearly destroyed. A Fen theory student, whose crystalline structure flickered with curiosity, spoke up. "Human Cole, how did you manage this? Bringing back an extinct predator requires massive resources and generational commitment." "It wasn't easy," Evan admitted, still scratching Luna's belly. "It took decades of work. We had to restore entire ecosystems, deal with political opposition, change laws, change minds. There were failures, setbacks, conflicts, but humans are stubborn. Once we decided we wanted wolves back, we didn't stop until it happened." "Remarkable," Professor Dawn murmured. She returned to her podium, her composure returning. "Class, I am abandoning today's planned lecture. Instead, we will discuss what Luna's presence means for our understanding of human ecology and the possibility of species resurrection." Luna yawned, displaying impressive fangs that made several students shift uncomfortably in their seats. Evan grinned. "Should I take her out? She's probably going to fall asleep. She's not much for academic discussions." "No," the professor said firmly. "She stays. Let her sleep. Let this class remember this moment, the day they learned that humanity's greatest shame was not the loss of the wolves, but our assumption that the loss was permanent." As the discussion began, with students eagerly pulling up corrected data on Earth's current wolf populations and rewilding projects, Luna settled her head on her paws and closed her eyes. Her chest rose and fell with the steady rhythm of a predator completely at ease. Above her, the holographic display still showed the old classification, Canis lupus, extinct, circa 2047 CE. Professor Dawn reached out and, with a decisive gesture, changed the status, Canis lupus, extant. Status, conservation success. The change propagated through the Galactic Collective's databases in seconds. Across 1,000 worlds in 1,000,000 classrooms, the story of Earth's wolves was being rewritten, not as a tragedy but as something the galaxy had rarely seen. A second chance, earned through effort and stubbornness. And in a lecture hall on Station Kepler 9, a wolf slept peacefully while the galaxy learned what humanity had always known, that some bonds refuse to stay broken, and that humans don't give up on the things they love. Not ever.